Welcome, seekers of eternal truth, to the final and profound chapter of our grand historic journey. Imagine holding all the wealth, absolute power, and endless wisdom this mortal world could offer you. Yet the greatest king in history found only empty shadows inside his magnificent golden palace. When every earthly idol shatters, what remains in the dreadful silence of a dying mortal soul? Today, we witness the revelation that alters the meaning of our human existence forever. We traveled with the wisest monarch through a long, exhausting journey of absolute devastation. King Solomon looked upon his massive kingdom, only to learn that silver could never purchase true peace. He realized that worldly fame is a fleeting illusion, fading away into the forgotten dust. Even the brilliant human intellect crumbles before the ruthless scythe of the ultimate Grim Reaper. If we only observe this painful life under the sun, everything is an empty and meaningless fog. He built grand palaces and planted glorious vineyards, seeking joy in the heavy labor of his own hands. Yet, when he surveyed all his magnificent achievements, he declared it was merely a chasing after the wind. The wise man and the fool both face the exact same destiny, descending into the silent, earthly grave. What profit does a mortal gain from his exhausting toil and the heavy burdens he carries in this life? Generations come and generations go, but the ancient earth remains exactly the same through history. The glowing sun rises in the east and sets in the west, only to hurry back to the place where it arose. The rushing rivers flow endlessly into the massive sea, yet the vast and mighty ocean is never truly filled. There is absolutely nothing new under the sun, for what has been done will certainly be done once again. He gathered silver and gold, the treasures of foreign kings, surrounding himself with endless earthly luxuries. He possessed beautiful singers and countless loyal servants, becoming greater than anyone in Jerusalem. Anything his eyes desired, he never kept from himself, denying his weary heart no worldly pleasure at all. But sorrow gripped his soul when he realized he must leave his massive empire to a man who comes after him. Who knows whether that successor will be wise or foolish, yet he will control all the fruits of a king's labor. This agonizing thought drove the wise monarch to despair, viewing human endeavors as a cruel punishment. Even in the darkness of night, a man's mind does not rest, constantly plagued by endless worries and deep sorrow. The king stared at the meaningless riches on the stone floor, recognizing the ultimate vanity of his power. He saw tears falling from the oppressed across the kingdom, finding no comfort in a world governed by cruel men. Power belongs to corrupt oppressors of the broken land, leaving the innocent to suffer devastating pain. Due to this tragic reality, the weary king praised the dead, who are already free from their earthly struggles. A person might live 1,000 years twice over, but without a lasting purpose, they go to the same dark place. Is it possible the greatest human wisdom is simply the ability to see the hopelessness of our dark plight? The shadows deepened within the silent royal chamber, reflecting the profound and massive void inside his dark soul. He held the absolute pinnacle of human success, only to find himself alone in a dark abyss. Is this the tragic end of our mortal human journey? A desperate struggle ending in forgotten dust? But Solomon does not abandon us in this dark pit of emptiness and agonizing earthly despair. He completely shattered every false idol constructed by the fragile hands of mortal human beings. The wise monarch forcefully pushed away his golden crown, rejecting deceitful promises of earthly power. He destroyed our misplaced hopes in material wealth, proving silver can never satisfy a hungry spirit. His profound purpose was never to push us toward death, but rather to strip away our blinding illusions. If worldly wealth and power cannot bring you true peace, where do you currently place your ultimate hope today? The king wanted humanity to lift their tired eyes and look beyond the limits of this fading, mortal world. When you have nothing left on this broken earth to cling to, the glorious heavenly sky finally opens up. He recognized God planted eternity into the fragile hearts of every living human being. We are not advanced animals destined for the dark dirt, but spiritual creatures longing for our Creator. The painful dissatisfaction we feel inside is a divine compass pointing toward our heavenly home. Solomon realized that seeking joy in earthly accomplishments is like trying to capture the shifting wind. Slowly, the defeated king raised his ancient and weathered face, searching the darkness for a true revelation. He understood there is a proper time and season for every single activity under the vast heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to weep bitterly and a time to laugh with immense joy. But God remains entirely sovereign over all these fleeting seasons, guiding history with a master's hand. A thin sliver of divine light began to penetrate heavy shadows within the ancient royal chamber walls. The king watched the glowing dust particles floating peacefully in the warm and brilliant illuminating beam. It was a symbol of fragile human existence, illuminated briefly before returning to nothing. He learned that observing life only under the sun leaves a person entirely and spiritually blind. We must connect our earthly moments to the eternal and unchanging perspective of our holy Creator. God created a beautiful rhythm to the universe, though mortal men cannot comprehend its totality. Ancient scrolls tell us that Solomon found true peace only when he completely surrendered his massive ego. He stopped demanding immediate answers and humbly accepted his own severe human limitations. Striving to control the unpredictable wind is a completely futile and exhausting endeavor. Wisdom, though much better than tragic foolishness, still cannot ultimately save a dying man from the dark grave. The greatest minds of history eventually turn to silent dust, exactly like the most ignorant fools. Yet the king recognized that enjoying a simple meal and honest labor is a beautiful gift from God. We must embrace the joyful, fleeting moments of life, recognizing them as blessings from the great Creator. Life is incredibly short and extremely fragile, a vanishing breath fading into the cold winter air. But within that brief and fleeting breath, we have the profound opportunity to reflect the glory of heaven. The wise king slowly pulled a weathered parchment scroll toward himself, preparing to write his final conclusion. He firmly gripped an ancient reed pen, his trembling hand guided by a sudden surge of divine inspiration. The burdens of existential despair were immediately lifted from his exhausted royal shoulders. Now all has been heard. Here is the final conclusion, Solomon decisively wrote upon the sacred scroll. His firm strokes were like a chisel, carving eternal truths into the bedrock of human history. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind, the wise prophet boldly declared. A profound conclusion that completely shatters the arrogant pride of our human philosophy. He gathered all existential dread and reduced it down to one simple and incredibly perfect action. The ultimate purpose of life is humble submission to the supreme authority of our Creator. To fear God does not mean to cower in terror, but to stand in awe of His infinite majesty. It is a profound reverence that transforms how we view every single moment of our brief mortal lives. When you respect God, the anxieties of this temporary world will finally and completely fade. The brilliant ray illuminated the ancient text, symbolizing the arrival of pure divine truth. He realized keeping the holy commandments is not a heavy burden, but the ultimate path to true freedom. We are perfectly designed by our Creator to live in total harmony with His righteous moral laws. A life lived for oneself is a tragic disaster, but a life lived for God gains an eternal significance. Solomon's face, once shadowed by sorrow, now radiated with an overwhelming spiritual peace. The vast treasures of gold and silver laying on the stone floor suddenly looked like worthless piles of dirty rocks. True wealth is not measured by the abundance of earthly possessions, but by the righteous purity of your soul. He found the ultimate antidote to the agonizing poison of nihilism infecting his brilliant mind. This divine revelation cut clearly through the chaotic fog of endless human striving and ambition. It matters not if you are a powerful king or a peasant. The singular duty of man remains the same. We must acknowledge our place as created beings, bowing before the eternal throne of the universe. In this glorious submission, the king finally discovered the profound meaning he so desperately sought. If letting go of control brings ultimate peace, what heavy burden are you still refusing to surrender? The heavy silence of the royal room was broken only by the scratching sound of the ancient wooden pen. Each specific word he wrote carried the immense weight of a lifetime, filled with great triumphs and failures. He was no longer a proud earthly king, but a humble servant, recording the absolute truth of heaven. Historic records of ancient Israel confirm that Solomon's final years were deeply marked by this truth. His magnificent temple would be eventually destroyed, but these sacred written words would forever remain. The illusion of human power was crushed under the glorious reality of God's endless dominion. True wisdom is not knowing everything, but knowing the Almighty One who holds all creation together. We are no longer wandering aimlessly through a fog. We have a clear and divine moral destination. The king looked intently at the ancient text he had just written, letting profound truth anchor his restless soul. A profound stillness filled the massive room, replacing chaotic anxiety of his former earthly days. All things beneath the sun are vanity, but deeds done for the Creator will stand for eternity. Life is never meaningless if you purposefully connect it to the great eternal heavenly source. Because Almighty God will bring every single human action into His perfectly righteous judgment. He will examine every hidden secret, whether it is beautifully good or completely evil. The bright light of His righteous judgment finally gives eternal meaning to your brief earthly existence. Every small moment on earth is no longer a random accident, but carries a deep, divine purpose. Solomon realized that facing the final judgment is not a reason for despair, but a source of hope. If God judges all things, then absolutely nothing in our universe is ever truly wasted. Each sorrowful tear and hidden sacrifice is carefully recorded in the eternal heavens. We are held accountable for our choices, giving profound weight to our daily mortal decisions. The bright light from above totally engulfed the weary king in its warm and comforting embrace. He no longer feared the dark shadow of death, for he had safely anchored his soul to the Lord of life. The heavy vanity of earthly existence completely dissolved in the glorious presence of truth. The king, who once ruled by his massive intellect, now surrendered entirely to pure divine wisdom. Our journey through the deep valley of philosophical despair has finally reached the highest peak. The ancient scroll of Ecclesiastes ends not with a tragic weeping, but rather with a loud, triumphant shout. Let the broken and weary souls of this chaotic world find absolute peace in the almighty hands of God. We are not forgotten orphans drifting in the void, but beloved creations of the eternal King. The magnificent royal chamber remained totally silent, yet it was completely filled with glory. The king closed his tired eyes, leaving behind a profound legacy that would echo through human history. Season 2 now comes to a close. The fundamental laws of human philosophy have been established. We have conquered the darkest valleys of the human mind, securing the absolute truth of our existence. But prepare your hearts, for a truly massive spiritual earthquake will soon strike humanity in Season 3. A humble teacher will soon appear, walking directly against the broken logic of this entire world. He brings no earthly army or crowns, yet he will completely overthrow every arrogant prejudice. With the legendary Sermon on the Mount, he will redefine the very fabric of power and glory. He reveals that the meek shall inherit the earth, destroying the ancient pride of mighty human empires. What is the true power of gentleness? How does absolute surrender lead to everlasting victory? Prepare for a deep awakening in episode 41 of our epic historical journey. The mighty king built a temple of stone, but the humble carpenter builds a temple of the human soul. The shadows of the ancient testament are fading, making way for the brilliant light of a brand new dawn. We have learned that without God, our greatest worldly achievements will ultimately amount to nothing. Now we must discover how to live within the perfect grace of the Mighty One who truly conquered death. Do not miss the spectacular and thrilling premiere of Season 3, where heaven touches the mortal earth. It is a cinematic and philosophical experience that will truly transform your perspective. Solomon concluded that fearing God is our only purpose. Does this liberate or restrict our freedom? Is submission to the Creator a sign of ultimate wisdom, or surrender to fear? Leave your thoughts below. If you seek eternal truth, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and kindly share it with the world. Your comments help us spread these important historical lessons to a wider global audience today. Thank you for joining this incredible journey. May the glorious light of divine truth always guide your path.